Good day everyone, so are you a lucky Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail player where it just feels like you can get back-to-back 5 stars, or are you like most of us, you go to hard pity only to just lose the 50-50? Well, this is what we're going to be discussing in today's video. Are some accounts truly luckier than other accounts, or is this just a statistical illusion? Very interesting question. Of course, this video is a follow-up to yesterday's video, so there's the card on the top right hand corner. If you haven't watched that video, I highly advise that you go and watch it, because we're just going to be carrying where we left off. So what you can see here on screen is what we did yesterday. We derived the probability distribution of getting a 5-star character within a specific number of pulls, and unlike yesterday, we are not going to be calculating probabilities today, but instead we're going to be simulating from this graph. So let us try and answer the question. How do we actually determine a luckiness? Well, here is the simulation strategy that we're going to follow. So first of all, we're going to create 10,000 hypothetical Genshin Impact accounts. For each one of these accounts, we're going to ask them to pull until they have 500 5 stars each. Once they get a 5-star, we will tally the number of pulls it took them to get that 5-star for each one of these 500 5-stars, and then we will draw a graph. But we're going to draw a bit of a special graph. So on the x-axis, we will have the number of 5-stars pulled, so this is 1 to 500. But on the y-axis, I'm going to introduce a bit of an interesting concept, and that is the concept of a cumulative rolling average number of pulls per 5-star. So let me just give you an example of a cumulative average. Let's assume you've gotten to 5 stars. The first time it took you 50 pulls, the next time it took you like 60 pulls. On average, if you just sort of add these two numbers up and divide them, it took you 55 pulls to get your 5-star. So what do we mean now by cumulative? Well, let's assume you pull another 5-star within 40 pulls. What we then do is we add the 40 to these two numbers, and then we recalculate the average, but now on 3 numbers instead of 2, and we just keep on doing this until eventually we have 500 of these numbers that we can just average out by dividing by 500. So that is what is a cumulative average, and the reason it's called rolling is because we roll through the numbers as we add them. So this is the strategy that we're going to follow, and of course there's one extra element that we need to add to get a sense of how lucky or unlucky players are, and that is to add bounds to these cumulative averages. So basically we want to capture the experience of the best and the worst players, and then just see how far you would typically be from these upper and lower bounds. So this is the strategy, and the graph is going to look like this. So not as neat as what I've just sort of shown you, but because we're doing this using Plotly and so on, we get a bit of cool features like zooming in and so on, which is really nice. But this is the graph. So as promised, on the x-axis you can see here the number of times a 5-star was pulled, and what you can see here on the y-axis is the cumulative rolling average number of pulls to get a 5-star. What you see in the graph are in essence 4 lines. So you see the upper bound, you see the lower bound, and then what you see is a graph in red and a graph in green. These are just 2 random accounts that I pulled, and you can see here I just called them random account 1 and of course random account 2. So how do we start to interpret this graph? Well, it's very simple. Let's start with the upper and lower bounds. For all 10,000 of my sort of hypothetical players, once they got to a stage of getting 500 5-star characters, the average pull per 5-star character, or the average number of pulls needed to get a 5-star character, was around 62.5. This is what we discussed in yesterday's video. So in line with what we said, this is what you'd expect. But what you see is that for the majority of players, the more and more they pull to get a 5-star character, the more certain these outcomes become. So right in the beginning, when they started pulling on characters, you could pull, let's say, your character within 30 pulls or 80 pulls. The outcomes are very wild for all of these accounts. But as time goes on, everything evens out. And in fact, what we can calculate here, as you can see at the top, is that for you to get 500 5-stars, the average amount of pulls that you will need is about 31,000. Now let's just dig a bit deeper here with these two little random accounts that I've put in. So basically the blue account, and let's just quickly zoom in on this little portion here. The blue account started off with a very high number of pulls, so this account was incredibly unlucky, but the red account was very, very lucky. They got their 5-star character very early on. Later what happened is that the guy that was very, very unlucky, and that was quite unlucky for quite a bit of a time, slowly started to get his luck turning around, whereas the super lucky guy here, basically, well, his luck got worse, as you'd sort of expect. But this is where the story gets like so fascinating. Even though one account was clearly very unlucky in the beginning and another account was clearly very lucky, both of these sort of started to even out. And in fact, there was a point here at the 73rd like 5-star where the account or the luck on both of these accounts completely reversed. In other words, the red account more persistently or more consistently pulled higher or had to pull more to get a 5-star than the earlier unlucky account. This to me is just an absolutely fascinating story, and as you can see here, even though one account was very lucky in the beginning, got back-to-back 5-stars within less than like 70 pulls and so on, at the end of the day, after 500 5-stars, they pulled more than even the average, whereas the unlucky account in the beginning actually pulled on less than the average, which you can sort of see here. So this is the illusion that I was talking about. Even if you experience a bad number of pulls, eventually what's going to happen is that things will start evening out for you. But here is a bit of a catch, and this is what we call the gambler's fallacy. Just because you got unlucky for a few times does not automatically mean that you're now going to get super lucky or that the 5-star is just going to come within the next 10 pulls. No, what's going to happen is that eventually your average number of pulls will even out, even though your 5-star to 5-star pulls might still vary quite a bit. And this is the key thing that you need to take into account. The variation in your pulls is so deceptive, but it will average out. The unfortunate thing is that by the time the game ends, most of us will not even get to the 500 stage, but you can be rest assured that from a statistical perspective, there is really no such thing as one account being luckier than another. It's just that the incidence in which the one account got their 5-stars came earlier than it did for another account. But overall, that is just the order in which things happen, which gives you the illusion that one account's luckier than the other, precisely because the order really matters for your gameplay experience, but from a statistical perspective, the order really doesn't matter in the long run. So this is the sort of perspective that I want to give you. And you can also see here that right at the end, the difference between the worst and the best or the luckiest players on average is just pretty much about like 2,000 pulls. So that is 500 multiplied by the difference between the upper and the lower, so that is like 4. So 500 multiplied by 4 is 2,000 pulls, but that is really at the extreme edges of it. Most people will eventually average out to 62.5 pulls per 5-star. So yes, this is the new concept that I wanted to present to you, to sort of tell you that luck doesn't really matter. The only reason why some accounts seem luckier than others is because their lucky experience directly correlates to better value that they can experience right now in the game. But when it really comes to the pulling on these accounts, it really doesn't matter in the long run. If you had to play this game for 10 years, you will eventually get to a point where most people, even after getting 100 5-stars, where the luck or the average number of pulls are just going to even out for the majority of accounts. And that is what we expect. We also expect that 1 or 2 very unlucky accounts will persistently be below this line. Perhaps 1 or 2 accounts might be persistently above this line, but on average, it really doesn't matter. So that is the concept that I wanted to give to you today, just to discuss lucky or unluckiness. I know it's unintuitive. I know people people can't marry the maths and what they see with their experience, but you can trust me, you are not as lucky or as unlucky as you really think. Alright, that has it been for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.